Good day, coders, and welcome to another brand new week where we will be creating a Scratch game in which you need to find a sprite that is hidden among a huge crowd of other characters. What you will make is click on the green flag, and once the curtain is up, try and find the sprite before your time runs out. What you will learn is how to create custom blocks that have inputs, how to use lists to store grid coordinates, and how to use loops to cycle over items in a list. So the first step we need to do is open Scratch. So right here I have Scratch opened, and we're going to save our project as line up. So here where it says Scratch project, type in there line up. This will save your file or your project as line up. Then we're going to add some more costumes to the cat sprite. You need to at least add 40 different costumes for your sprite. It's best to select costumes from the people section, but if you want to, you can choose costumes from other sections as well. What we'll be doing is only using 10 costumes in one sprite. So as you can see, we've got our cat here. So we will go to costumes. And as you can see, we already have 2 costumes here. So what we're going to do is add 10 more costumes. So we click here on choose a costume. We can go to people and we can just select any of these costumes and bring out 10 of them. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring out 10. I've got Abby A, number 1. Anina Pop, number 2. I can say Andy, number 3. Then I can go, let's go to animals. I can have bear, number 4. Let's go back to animals. I can have a chick, number 5. I can go to fantasy and bring a bat, number 7. There we go. 8. Let's bring out 9. And my last one, which will be batter, 10. So as you can see, I have 11. So let's delete costume 1 of the cat so we can have costume 2 of the cat. All right, once you have your costumes, you can delete the default cat costumes if you want to. The next step we're going to do is create a grid. So you're going to create a grid of Stampede costumes. To do this, you need to know the X and Y coordinates of where each stamp should be placed. First, create a new block called Generate Positions. The block needs to have 2 number input parameters. Call these 2 parameters rows and columns. So we're going to go to code and we're going to click on My Blocks. After My Blocks, we're going to click on Make a Block and type there Generate Positions. And then we're going to click on Add an Input and call the first input rows. Click again on Add Input and call it columns. So we have 2 rows and columns. And we're going to click OK. So now we have defined generate positions, rows, and columns. Now we need to create 2 lists and call one of them X position and the other Y position. So we go to variables, make a variable, make a list, call the first one X positions and another list called Y positions. Positions, and click OK. So now these lists are for storing the X and Y coordinates for the stamps. Inside your generate positions block, add blocks to delete all the items from both the lists so that each time the game starts, the lists are empty. So we're going to scroll down here and look for delete all. We're going to drag two of them so that it deletes the Y position and the X positions. Next, we're going to create two variables and call one of them X position and the other Y position. So in this one, we're going to scroll up, make a variable and call it X POS for position. Make another one Y POS for Y position. The X positions list should contain 10 numbers in total, and these should start at -200 and go up to 200. For now, the X positions list can just contain the number 150 times, so that the grid only has one row. So start by adding a code to the generate positions block to set the Y position variable to -150 and the X position variable to -200. This is the location of the first stampede sprite. So what we do is going to set X and Y value. So set X position and set Y position. So let's say the first one will be set Y position and the second one could be set X position. So Y position should be -155. The second position, which is X position, should be -200. Next, add a repeat loop to put coordinates into the lists. The repeat loop should run once for every column you want the grid to have. The generate positions block takes columns as an input, so you can use columns for the repeat loop. So what we're going to do is going to control, drag out repeat 10, and here where it says columns, just drag out columns and replace 10 with columns. Within the repeat loop, add the values of X position and Y position into the list. Then you need to increase the value of X position by a little. So to do this, we are going to need the add position and the change position. So we go to variables, we scroll down and look for add. So we're going to add two of them for the X and Y. So we're going to have the X first, X position and Y position. So it's going to add X position to the X position and add Y position to the Y position. So make sure that they are the same. Then you're going to change X position, X POS for position by. Now it said what we need to do is have the X position value to be added each time around the loop. The value of X position should increase by 400 divided by, in brackets, columns -1. So this is where we're going to be doing a little bit of math. So here we go to operators, we get the division and replaced it with 1. So now we've got empty divided by empty. So the first block should be 400 divided by, in brackets, we'll have the minus. So here will act as a bracket, minus. And in the first block will be columns, -1. So now we're going to test the script. To test the script, you need to call the custom block and provide it with the number of columns you want in your grid. So we need to add this code to our sprite. So we go to events and we're going to have our when green flag clicked. Then we're going to go to blocks. Then we're going to have generate positions. In the first block is 1 and in the second block is 10. Now, click on the green flag to run your program. You should see your two lists fill with values. So we click on the green flag, and yes, I have my X position with values and my Y position with values. If your results don't look like this, Then go back to the previous step, which is rewind the video and have a look at the codes that you've done. Maybe you have replaced the wrong numbers, or you've switched the code to another code. So this way you should know that your X position and your Y position should have 10 values. 10 values like this. Now, the next step we need to do is stamp a row. So far, you have 10 values in each of the two lists. Now stamp some costumes at the stage coordinates stored in the list. So now we need to add the pen extension to your project. So here on your blocks, up until at the bottom, we've got my blocks. But now we need an extension, something that is not in the codes palette. So we're going to go to, at the bottom of our program, there is an icon for add extension. We click on it, and as you can see, it says choose an extension. So what we want is the pen. So the pen, draw with your sprite. So we click on pen, and it should come up underneath my blocks. So now we're going to create a new block and call it stamp sprite. This block needs two number inputs named rows and columns, just like the other custom block. So we go to my blocks, we make a block and call it stamp sprites. We're going to add an input rows and another input columns, and we're going to click OK. So now we've got our code right here. Define stamp sprites, rows, and columns. Now we're going to create a variable called index with which to track the position in the lists that your program is reading. To begin with, set index to 1 to fetch the first item of each list. So we're going to go to variables and make a variable called index. Index. And then we're going to set index to 1. Index to 1. The stamp sprites block should stamp a sprite for each pair of coordinates in the list. To do this, the block needs a repeat loop that runs once for each column. So we're going to have a repeat loop. Go to control, repeat loop, and have it repeat the columns. The columns. Within the repeat loop, move the sprite to the index position in the X positions and the Y positions list. Then we're going to stamp the sprite, then change the index by 1. So this will be easy. All we need is the motion block, the pen block, and the variable block. So we're going to go to motion, and we're going to drag in the go to X and Y value. So in the X value, we need an item of X position. So that will be in variables. We scroll down and we look for item 1. So we drag item 1. Item 1. Here it is. Item 1. So the first item will be index. So index, item index of X position, and it will be a item index for Y position. Item index, index, scroll up, index of X position. Y position, X position. Then we're going to go to pen and get the stamp and put it inside the repeat loop. Then we're going to go back to variables and get the change index by 1. Add a erase all block below the when green flag clicked block to clear the stage each time the game starts. Then add the stamp sprites block at the bottom of the when flag clicked script so you can test your new code. So what we do is go to pen, erase all so that it's on top. Then we're going to go to my blocks, drag in stamp sprite and put the values 1 and 10. All right, and in the second block, we type in the 10. So now click the green flag. You should see something like this, depending on the costumes your sprite has. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly untick these boxes here on variables and on positions so that we can see our stage clearly. We're going to click the green flag, and as you can see, we have multiple costumes of the same sprite. So now the next step is change the costumes. So at the moment, your program stamps the same sprite costume over and over, and the size of the costume is too large. So add a code to the stamp sprites block to make the sprite a suitable size before the repeat loop starts. Add a block inside the loop to switch the next costume after the stamp block. So what we need to do is, by the define stamp sprite rows and columns, we need to set the size to 40%. So we go to looks, drag in set size, and change the 100 to 40. And inside the repeat loop, we're going to have next costume underneath the stamp. So when you run the script now, you should see something more like this. Different sprites. Your program cycles through all the costumes in order so that each costume does not show up in the same place every time the program runs. You should stamp the sprite in random places on the grid. To do this, you need to follow this algorithm. Repeat until the list is empty. Set index to a random number between 1 and the length of a list. Move the sprite as you did before. Delete the item at index position from the Y positions list, and delete the index position of the X positions list. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull down the repeat loop and delete the set index to 1. Bring back the repeat loop, and then instead of the index being the first one on top of the repeat loop, it will be inside the repeat loop, the first one. So set index 2 inside the repeat loop, go to operators, drag in pick random number 1 to 10, and instead of a 10, we're going to go to variables and look for length of X position. Length of X position, and replace it with 10. Then we're going to delete index of X position. So delete index position of X position, and delete index of Y position. Then we can remove the change index by 1. So now the next step is adding rows. So now that you have the code to create a single row of Stampede costumes, you should add code to create more rows. Go to generate positions block. Generate positions block. So it'll be this code. And what you do is add another repeat loop that runs the number of times you give to the generate positions block as the rows input. Place the repeat loop into your script as shown right over here. So this repeat loop, we go to control, we're going to have it like this, and instead of 10, it will be rows. Then we're going to go to variables, set X position to minus 200. Next, you need to increase the value of Y position each time the repeat rows loop runs. You do this in a similar manner to how you increase the value of X position in the repeat columns loop. So at the end of the code inside the repeat rows loop, Y position should increase up to 150, which is 300 away from its starting value of minus 150. These needs to happen for each row of stamps. So I'm going to put this down. So we're going to have the first one, which is set X position. So we're going to drag down to the repeat and get rid of set X position to minus 200. Pull this back up. So we have the set Y position to minus 150. Then right underneath the second repeat loop, which is the columns, we have the change Y position by what we did with the first one. We had the division, and in the first block we have 300. And what we do next is have the division as well. I mean the minus, sorry. So it'll be the minus. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that the minus is the first one, and the division will be in the first block. So it'll be 300 divided by rows minus 1. So it is reversed. Make sure you give the number of rows as an input to your blocks. So in the green flag, when green flag clicked, change the numbers to 4. Same as here, 4. So run your code now. So we click it, and you should see that they appear in random spots. You won't get a neat grid of stamps. This is because right now the stamp sprite block only runs for the total number of columns. So change your stamp sprite script so that it repeats enough times to stamp the complete grid of sprites. So it has to fill the stage. So we're going to be now focusing on the define stamp sprite rows and columns block. So instead of repeating columns, it will be repeating the rows and columns. So we need the multiplication inside there. In the first block will be rows, and in the second block will be columns. There we go. Now if you click the green flag, it should fill up the stage. Next thing we need to do is hide your sprite among the crowd of stamps. At the moment, the sprite overlaps one of the stamps. So what we need to do, so in order for this to not happen, make your stamp loop run one time less than rows divided by columns minus 1. So here we'll need another operator, which is the minus. So we're going to do this in the first block, minus 1. If you run the script now, you can see that your sprite still overlaps with the stamp, and there is a hole in your grid. Add in the X position and Y positions list. There is one coordinate position left. So to finish this part of your game, go to your when green flag clicked section of the sprite, add an animation so that it starts the game. The sprite should appear at a larger size and say find me. Then the sprite should hide itself among the stamps in the empty space you have left for it. See if you can figure out how to do this, and I'll give you a few hints. So the hint is you need to send your sprite to X, which is 0, and Y, which is 0, the coordinates. Then you need to bring the sprite to the front and set its size to 100%. Then you want it to say find me for 2 seconds. Then you want it to go back one layer, set the sprite size to 40%, and move to the last remaining position in the list. So what you do here is focusing on the green flag clicked. When green flag clicked, and all we need to do is go to motion, drag in the go to X and Y value, change them to 0. Then we go to looks and scroll down and look for go to front. Go to front. Set size to 100%. Say find me for 2 seconds. Go back 1 layer. So go back, which will be backward 1 layer. Then set size to 40%. And then go to X and Y value, which will be item, which is in the variables box, item 1 of X position and item 1 of Y position. Let's just put this here to create space of Y position. Y position. Now we're almost done. We're going to be finishing the game. To finish the game, find and download an image of a stage curtain. To import this image, all you need to do is click on the icon for adding a sprite. You're going to go to upload a sprite. Once it does that, you will have your curtain sprite wherever you have saved it. So the first thing we need to do is find a curtain sprite. So let's do that. Let's go to the internet. We search there, curtain sprite, curtain sprite. All right, you go to images, and I found one. Is right. It's the sprite FX. We can click on sprite FX, wait for it to load, right click on it and say save image as. Save image as. Save image as. Then you're going to save it in a spot that you can find it. So let's say you'll find it in the downloads folder. So you'll click on or save the file as curtain sprite. And then you click on save. And as you can see, it will pop up right here at the bottom. Now what you need to do is go back to your program sprite, come to the choose a sprite icon, look for upload sprite, go to downloads, look for the curtain sprite and say open. And there we go. It has imported the sprite for you. So now what we need to do is change the size of our curtain sprite. So we're going to go to green flag. When green flag clicked, motion, go to the X and Y value, X meaning 0, Y 0. Go to looks, set size to 110%, and it should show. Then in the scripts for your character sprite, add a broadcast with the message curtain up to the end of the when green flag clicked. So we go to our sprite, and at the end of our when green flag clicked, we have to broadcast. So we go to events, broadcast message, click on the drop down arrow and click new message, type there curtain up and click OK. When this curtain sprite receives the broadcast, the sprite needs to move upwards for 10 seconds so that it looks like the curtain is raised to reveal the stamps. Then the curtain should drop again, so the curtain sprite needs to move downward. Okay, so now we need to code our curtain to move up. So we should have when I receive curtain up, go to looks and look for go to front layer. Then control, wait 1 second, motion, and look for glide 1 second to X and Y value. Glide 1 second to X, the value is 0 and the Y value is 300. Then it should hide. Then go to variables and create a variable called timer and set timer to 10. Repeat 10 times, and inside the repeat loop have the wait 1 second and change time or timer to -1. Then it should show itself once again, show, and then go to motion and get the glide 1 second to X and Y value, which X will be 0 and Y will be also 0. The very last part is to let the player know if they've won. In the script for the character sprite, add a code so that when the sprite is clicked, the sprite says you found me and all the scripts in the game stop. So we go to script, we go to events. So when the sprite is clicked, say you found me, and stop all the characters. Stop all. So now that we've come to the end of our game, here are some ideas for you to make your game more interesting. Can you alter your script so that you can use even more costumes? How about choosing a background and then making the sprites nearer the top of the screen appear smaller so they seem further away? Or can you make the game run for several rounds and provide you with the score based on how long it takes you to complete 5 rounds?